Hi, students and families in room 202. I am going to be reading to you A Bad Case of the Stripes. We see some red, some yellow, some green, some blue, some orange, and purple. Let's find out how she got her stripes. Camilla Cream loved lima beans, but she never ate them. All of her friends hated lima beans, and she wanted to fit in. Camilla was always worried about what other people thought of her. Today she was fretting even more than usual. It was the first day of school, and she couldn't decide what to wear. There were so many people to impress. She tried on 42 outfits, but none seemed to fit quite right. She put on a pretty red dress and looked in the mirror. Then she screamed, "Ah!" Her mother ran into the room, and she screamed too. "Oh, my heavens," she cried, "you are completely covered with stripes." This was certainly true. Camilla was striped from head to toe. She looked just like a rainbow. "Do you feel all right?" her mom asked. "I feel fine," she answered, "but look at me." "You get back into bed this instant," her mother ordered. "You are not going to school today." Camilla was happy. She did not want to miss the first day of school, but she was afraid of what the other students might say. That afternoon, Dr. Bumble came to examine Camilla. "Most extraordinary," he said. "I've never seen anything like it. Are you coughing? Sneezing? Achoo! Do you have a runny nose or pain? Chills or hot flashes? Dizziness or drowsiness?" "No," Camilla told him. "I feel fine." "Well then," Dr. Bumble said, "I don't see any reason she shouldn't go to school tomorrow. Here is some ointment to clear up those stripes." The next day was a disaster. Everyone at school laughed at Camilla. They called her Camilla Cran, and Night of the Living Lollipop. She tried her best to act as if everything were normal, but when the class said the Pledge of Allegiance, her stripes turned into red, white, and blue with stars. The other kids thought it was great. One yelled out, "Let's see some purple polka dots." Sure enough, Camilla turned all purple polka dotty. Someone even shouted, "Checkerboard!" and a pattern of squares covered her skin. Soon everyone was calling out different shapes and colors, and poor Camilla was changing faster than you can change the channel on a TV. That night, Mr. Harms, the school principal, called. "I'm sorry, Miss Cream," he said. "I'm going to have to ask you to keep Camilla home from school. She's just too much of a distraction. And I've been getting calls from other parents. They're afraid those stripes might be contagious." Camilla was so embarrassed. She couldn't believe that 2 days ago everyone liked her. Now nobody wanted to be in the same room as her. "Well, yes, I see," Dr. Bumble mumbled when Mr. Cream phoned the next day. "I think I'd better bring the specialist. We'll be right over." About an hour later, Dr. Bumble arrived with 4 people in long white coats. He introduced them to the Creams. "This is Dr. Grope, Dr. Sponge, Dr. Cricket, and Dr. Young." Then the specialist went to work on Camilla. They squeezed and jabbed, tapped and tested. It was very uncomfortable. Well, they are not the mumps, or the measles, definitely not chicken pox, or sunburn. "Try one of these before bed." They each handed her a bottle filled with different colored pills. Then they filed out the door, followed by Mr. Bumble. That night, Camilla took her medicine. It was awful. When she woke up the next morning, she did feel different. But when she got dressed, her clothes didn't feel right. She looked in the mirror, and there, staring back at her, was a giant, multicolored pill with a face on it. Dr. Bumble rushed over as soon as Miss Cream called. But this time, instead of the specialists, he brought the experts, the finest scientific minds in the land. Once again, Camilla was poked and prodded, looked at and listened to. The experts wrote down lots of numbers. Then they huddled together and whispered, "It might be a virus," he announced with authority. Suddenly, fuzzy little virus balls appeared all over Camilla, or possibly some sort of bacteria. Out of popped squiggly little bacteria tails, or it could be a fungus. Camilla was covered with different colored fungus blotches. The experts looked at Camilla, then at each other. "We need to go over these numbers again at the lab. We'll call you when we know something." But the experts didn't have a clue. By now, the TV news had found out about Camilla. Reporters from every channel were outside her house telling the story of the bizarre case of the incredible changing kid. Soon a huge crowd was camped outside of their front lawn. The creams were swamped with all kinds of remedies from psychologists, allergists, herbalists, nutritionists, psychics, and a medicine man, and even a veterinarian. Each so-called cure only added to poor Camilla's strange appearance until it was hard to even recognize her. She sprouted roots and berries and crystals and feathers and a long furry tail, but nothing worked. One day, a woman who called herself an environmental therapist claimed she could have a cure. "Close your eyes," she said, "breathe deeply, and become one with your room." "I wish you hadn't said that," Camilla groaned. Slowly, she started to melt into the walls of her room. Her bed became her mouth, her nose was a dresser, and 2 paintings were her eyes. The therapist screamed and ran from the house. "What are we going to do? It just keeps getting worse and worse." At that moment, Mr. Cream heard a quiet little knock at the front door. He opened it, and there stood an old woman who was just as plump and sweet as a strawberry. "Excuse me," she said brightly. "I think I can help." She went into Camilla's room and looked around. "My goodness," she said with a shake of her head. "What have we here is a bad case of the stripes, one of the worst I have ever seen." She pulled a container of small green beans from her bag. "Here," she said, "these might do the trick." "Are those magic beans?" asked her mother. "Oh my, no," replied the kind old woman. "There's no such thing. These are just plain old lima beans. I'd bet you'll like some, wouldn't you?" Camilla wanted a big heaping plate full of lima beans more than about anything, but she was too afraid to admit it. The old lady put the beans back in her bag and started towards the door. Camilla watched the old woman walk away. Those beans would taste so good, and being laughed at for eating them would be nothing compared to what she'd been going through. "Wait," she cried. "The truth is, I really love lima beans." "I thought so," the old woman said with a smile. She took a handful of beans and popped them into Camilla's mouth. Suddenly, the branches, feathers, and squiggly tails began to disappear. Then the whole room swirled around. When it stopped, there stood Camilla, and everything was back to normal. "Yay, I'm cured," she shouted. "Yes," said the old woman. "I knew the real you was in there somewhere." She patted Camilla on the head. Then she went outside and vanished into the crowd. Afterward, Camilla wasn't quite the same. Some of the kids at school said she was weird, but she didn't care one bit. She ate all the lima beans she wanted, and she never even had a touch of the stripes again. The end.